What I want to know is how brands are effectively using AI and personalization today to get further faster.
This is obviously, it is a topic of great interest to a lot of brands. A lot of big enterprises are tinkering with AI. They're kind of innovating with it. They're experimenting with it, but they haven't yet hit on these huge transformational use cases where they are willing to sink tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars into pursuing one big objective. What we're seeing with a lot of our clients is that they are almost distributing AI use cases in quite a small way across their business. But the interesting impact of that is that you're seeing lots of incremental gains. So you're seeing incremental gains in things like productivity improvements. You're seeing incremental gains in terms of things like the consumer experience being improved in sort of marginal ways here and there. And overall, I think this is starting to make an impact on their business, but they're not yet hitting on these big, chunky use cases.
The speed of evolution and the speed of enhancements is massive. There are a handful of companies that are attracting billions and billions of investment into enhancing AI. So right, that's not us. We're not going to be the ones who are going to spend all that money. We let the folks who are really focused on driving AI do that. The way I see, or the important role I see for technologies and other complementary technologies, in our case, commerce technology, is to be AI ready. And the way you do that, in fact, is by making your documentation, sample code, by making your data available so that AI, large language models and others can learn and do what they need with your data. As you get into an implementation phase, what does that mean? Well, it means you can now start to use language models to help you either build an integration, or even we had one of our team the other day, within less than 20 minutes was able to go from zero to building a fully functional, somewhat branded commerce site using AI. So the speed at which some of these other mundane, maybe repetitive tasks can now be executed using AI is phenomenal, but only because the AI is able to pull what it needs through the APIs and through the documentation and actually and sort of get what it needs from that. So I think that's the most important thing, is making sure that the technologies are AI ready.
The digital journey in life sciences stopped being about the platform and started to be about experiences. And here in particular, we talk about patient experiences, doctor experiences, perhaps scientist or lab technician experiences, driven by these new platforms, but driven by personalization of those platforms for the users and the stakeholder groups themselves. After this, the third and perhaps final stage of the journey so far of digital transformation is when the life sciences companies realize, okay, we've got these great platforms in place and we've personalized them to some extent, and we've gathered a set of data, the like of which we've never seen before. And today, in 2024, I don't think anyone would argue that digital transformation in life sciences particularly is all about data. It's about data-driven experiences on the most modern platforms. And of course, no statement on digital transformation can be complete without mentioning AI. And of course, AI depends on data. So that's the link. This data-driven patient journeys and data-driven doctor experiences that we see most companies seeking today is absolutely amplified and supported by the push into AI and generative AI technologies.
In my area, in the commercial area, it needs to be refined. The platforms need to be set up for us to be able to execute well against that. And EPAM and some of our understanding of the way that these tools are being built is a great opportunity for our customers to take advantage of that. We've built our own engine on top of ChatGPT to be able to qualify and control and train the data in a better way. And that will enable customers who are already building out their AI platforms to be able to take advantage of that knowledge.
There are a couple of areas which are really, really interesting, particularly around kind of marketing and commerce. There is a lot of talk about AI being transformational in content generation. It's a really obvious area, right? Brands, retailers spend huge amounts on producing content to show to their consumers, their customers. It costs a lot of money, and obviously the ability to create content almost for free is really appealing. But what I think is not that exciting about that is that if you ask any consumer out there if they feel like the world is lacking for content from brands or from retailers, the answer will probably be no. They already feel massively oversaturated. And so the idea of flooding more content onto the market but it's not necessarily any better in quality. And maybe it's worse because everyone trends, they're using the same models, everyone trends towards the center, is not necessarily a good thing. An area that I think is kind of in slight opposition to that that's really interesting is if you look at, rather than just crashing the cost of content production, crashing the cost of areas where you're not just going to get a cost reduction as a retailer, but you're also going to get a big benefit to your business. And one area I think is really rich to look at is the idea of customer centricity. Something that we are working on with a couple of big brands at the moment is the idea of building a customer model. So as a retailer, as a brand, you can define who your target audience is. You define in traditional ways like age and gender and interest and other kind of socio-demographic factors. And what you can then do is by mining their own data about those customers, their transaction habits, by mining proprietary data sets from third-party data providers, but also just kind of scraping social media data about what people who meet these criteria say on Twitter, you can build these kind of models of these profiles. And when they're built, what you can then do is allow anyone in your business to ask that model a question at any time, almost for free. And of course, the answers that come back aren't necessarily 100% faithful to what a real life customer would say. So this isn't necessarily replacing customer research wholesale, but what it is doing is it's giving a really good directional steer. And in studies, we've seen that there can be something like an 80% match between the answers that models give and the answers that customers were given a kind of panel setup. If you can get something that's 80% accurate on what a customer would say, but you can allow anyone to ask a customer a question at any point, any website designer, any e-commerce kind of optimization person, any marketer to say at any point, what do you think of this? What do you think of this copy? How does this content resonate? Then that becomes really, really powerful because the whole organization can pivot to becoming much more customer centric. I think a good example of this is a big fashion marketplace that we work with, big European fashion marketplace. This is a really brutal industry to be in because you are competing for attention and with a level of kind of personalization and amazing dopamine hits with things like TikTok and Instagram and Shein and these companies that are really finely attuned to be very, very customer centric. And so it's tough. And what these guys found is that they do a lot of work in kind of sports retail, and they were getting product shots from big sports fashion houses. And these guys, these sports fashion houses, they're pretty good at showcasing their products in a good light. But what this marketplace found is that these pack shots, these product shots in themselves were not enticing enough to get consumers to stay on the site and to actually purchase the products at the rates at which they previously had, because they were getting kind of that traffic was getting cannibalized by these other sites that were really, really good at customer experience. And so we did a really interesting piece of work with these guys where the first thing we did is worked on their kind of underlying data layer. They had very, very distributed data set up and they were doing all of these fantastic use cases all over their business. But what it meant is that their data infrastructure was very, very fragmented. So first of all, we did my data colleagues won't like me saying this, but quite a dry piece of work that was thinking about get all your data in one place, make sure you can start to get value out of it in a centralized way. And then we did two things. The first thing we did is we worked on these very smart personalization models so that we could predict what products people would like to see. And we showed some good uplift in getting kind of traditional personalization done better. What products are most relevant for each individual based on who they are and their purchase habits. But these guys were still constrained by the fact that when it came to showcasing the product, it was still just a pair of shoes shown in a very kind of dry way. And so what we then did is worked on this kind of generative AI avatar approach, where people could actually configure avatars that looked like them, and then we could take all of those product shots and we could project them onto the avatar that you could interact with. It would be in 3 dimensions. And so you go from having the same kind of static product image that everyone sees to, as an individual, being able to see that showcased on someone who looks more like you, wearing other clothes. Much, much more interactive, much more compelling. And unsurprisingly, what these guys saw is that time on site went up and conversion rate went massively up as well. So it's a really nice example of kind of taking some more traditional AI machine learning approaches to just making good predictions about what people want to see, but then extending that into quite a transformational consumer experience.
2024 has become the year of the Gen AI business case. So our clients have moved from use cases, which is like, where could we maybe use Gen AI? Through to business cases, which is where are we going to get value from using Gen AI? And it's a natural transition, of course. First of all, you have to just spark your imagination, and then you start to do the value case. EPAM is working with many of our clients, particularly some of the more innovative pharma companies, to build Gen AI capabilities into areas such as patient support, such as intelligent search when a scientist or a researcher is looking for medical content on a portal, helping that search in a more intelligent way, which is maybe less risky than, for example, everyone always gives the example of using Gen AI to provide a diagnosis to a patient, which is highly risky. We don't want to do that yet. But one day it will come, and the way we will get there is step by step by, let's say, managing the risk that we take in very, very small increments so that we can prove the technology one step at a time.
We increasingly think that in the future, these new heads or commerce experiences will be driven by AI, whether it's through voice or through image or whatever it might be. And again, being ready to execute and build those at speed is really where we see things going.
Even if the use cases that people are pursuing now are not the totally transformational ones that are going to deliver, huge shareholder value, I think there is real value in, as an organization, learning how to work with these tools, because you're embedding the skills that mean that when the transformational use cases do come around, you're going to be able to weave those through your business much, much more quickly. Because the reason AI is complex to work with is that it's not just a new technology, it also fundamentally changes the way that people work. And we're seeing some of our more kind of early adopting clients get into these hybrid operating models where people are collaborating with AI agents in all of their tasks. And when this is done well, it's not necessarily a big challenge to weave those into your daily life because they're very intuitive to work with. But as an organization, figuring out how you do that in a structured way is tough. So I think there is something to be said for just innovating today, even if the things that you're doing are not the things that are going to be totally transformational. Just learning how to embed that as a reflex is really, really valuable.
So if you enjoyed today's content and you want to hear more, then please go and subscribe to EPAM's YouTube channel, where you'll find lots of other content, but also a very specific content stream around the retail race. But also, please do go and check out the amazing individuals that I've been interviewing. We will pop links to all of their LinkedIn profiles in the notes here somewhere. And stay connected, guys.